It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you're with us on this Tuesday. Plenty to get to on the show. We'll hear from Chrissy Freud of the Draft Network. We'll look at quarterbacks going in the draft. She's got Zach Wilson, number one, on her big board. We'll talk to her about that. Also, Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, will join us. We got Players Championship this week, and also Jake Crane of the J-Boy Show will join us. We'll talk some college football with him as well. But speaking of college football, fellas, Les Miles out at Kansas after all that came to light about his time at LSU last week. The two have agreed to mutually part ways there, and Mike DeBoard going to serve as interim head coach at Kansas. So Les Miles out of a job.
Yeah, and when the reports came out, very troubling, very concerning, and you had Joe Aliba, the athletic director, basically suggesting or saying, "Hey, we probably should fire him for cause," which obviously would have been the right call. And then you have the rule that says, "Hey, you can't be in a room alone with another female student." That stuff very concerning. It was only a matter of time, and you had he was on administrative leave. Miles was, I guess, for 2 or 3 days, and then that news breaks last night, and yeah, it's the right call. The information, the allegations in those reports, very serious, very concerning. And if you're Kansas, mutually part ways. I'm not quite sure what that means. But you make the move, you move forward, and you move forward from Les Miles.
The thing about this, BJ and Kevin, I mean, we know what already has come out in the report in LSU. I think Kansas decided to go ahead and make a move just in case something else comes out. They already like, well, listen, we've already washed our hands of the situation that way. And public perception is going to rule today. Kansas is going to be a team that's always going to be scratching and clawing for even respectability in that conference. Then you bring a guy over Les Miles who's supposed to boost your reputation, and now it's taking another hit when you look at what happened 8 years ago at LSU. So I think when you look at Kansas, they said, let's go ahead and cut bait now. It's still, we still like early in the spring, still got it. I think they didn't use a firm to go out there and not like help them, find Les Miles. They're going to definitely use one the second time around. But I just think that when you look at the situation as a whole, I think they had to move on with this situation when you talk about Les Miles, because you know what they're going to say? Okay, if he did that at LSU, what was he doing at Kansas? Even though nothing about that has come out. So I think BJ and Kevin, because we don't know what else is going to come out potentially, when they finally, if something else does come out of LSU, I think because I don't know about the foreseeable future with a guy like Les Miles, I think you got to go ahead and move on right now.
And again, they are moving on from Les Miles. And I know, they brought up, hey, we didn't use a search firm to kind of vet candidates. I mean, I think if you're Kansas, I can understand how that could happen. Hey, there's a chance to get Les Miles, when he came back at Kansas, BJ, was one of 4 coaches that actually,
I think 4 or 5, yeah, Matt Brown now.
Yeah, that were active. So you was like, hey, that's a chance to get a guy of that caliber. Obviously, could have done a little bit more homework, but I could see why initially they jumped on that. Here this afternoon, a lot of discussion on social media about that Kansas job. If it's open, they decided to go another direction about, hey, if you're Kansas, traditionally kind of outside of what the Mark Mangino years, you've been down near the bottom of the Big 12. Could you go after a guy like Jeff Monken potentially and bring a triple option scheme to the Big 12?
Yeah, you've seen a couple of names on social media. I saw that. I saw another former Georgia Southern head coach mention Willie Fritz. Potentially would he be an option out of Tulane currently? And then you have kind of some of the mid-major coaches that have been rumored for a lot of the I hate to say lower level, but kind of more modest from a history and tradition standpoint, Power 5 jobs like a Lance Leopold at Buffalo. It'll be interesting. I don't know what Kansas is going to pay. Kansas is a national stature in terms of football is not well established. But I mean, you joke about that though, for all the coaching rumors that are on Twitter. I mean, if you say a Jeff Monken, if you say a Willie Fritz, if you say, someone like that, is Kansas a better job than Army right now?
I mean, as far as like restrictions, it is. I think when you and then it goes back to what Kevin said. How much can Kansas pay compared to what the Army can pay?
But I mean, Army was in the,
making $2.2 million.
Yeah, but I mean, Army was in the national top 25 last year.
But BJ, you got to. I mean, the thing is too. I mean, if you think about how many, I mean, the reason why Army like goes out and recruits a certain player, they're looking at guys who can handle the workload as a player. That goes up times 10 if you're the head coach. So, I mean, yes, Army is always going to be an attractive job, but can you handle the workload that's going to be far different than what any other coach is going to have to deal with? So, yeah, Army is always going to be intriguing, but I just think that, you know, you talk about a team like Kansas, as you mentioned. I mean, always going to be known for basketball. Now they dealing – Kansas, of all people, is dealing with restrictions. Oh, my God, from a head coach that, you know, was one of the, 5 or 6 head coaches that got a national championship next to his name. I think they're going to have to go in a different direction, BJ, offensively, just to do something. Because what they have been doing for Kansas has not been working. I mean, the only Kansas players I can remember, Chris Harris Jr. and Aqib Talib. And I was with the Bucks when they got Aqib Talib. I said, you went to what? He said, I went to Kansas. For football? Yeah, we got a football team out there. So I just think that, I mean, Coach Monkey would be not some, you know, a good fit, but just bringing something different out there, because now think about it. The next Kansas head coach got to come in talking about, look, man, we're gonna run a good program here. Are you? I don't think you was running a bad program. I just think you had the wrong coach.
Well, I mean, Kansas just had problems sustaining success. Obviously, you're not dealing with the same football resources that BJ said of Oklahoma and Texas when it comes to that situation, but it would be interesting if you had the option there. And Big 12, not known for defense, had to come up and try to defend something a little bit different there as well. Some other college football news out there. Of course, yesterday, I know you guys talked about the tape of Russ Probst talking about Georgia and Alabama and, Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, and all those kind of allegations he put out there. Nick Chubb, his name was brought up in that tape. He responded on Twitter, said, look, quote, if I needed money, I would have went pro, #fake news.
I mean, doesn't that sound logical, right? I mean, if you're Nick Chubb and you're a big time football superstar, you were since your freshman year, you had a clear opportunity to go to the NFL. I mean, if you wanted to maximize yourself monetarily, I think it would have been very easy to just go out and do that. So good for Nick Chubb, man. Yeah. And fake news, that hashtag apparently still going around, but listen, if I stuff like that is crazy. And I think if Nick Chubb wanted to make money, it would have been a very easy and simple decision just to enter the draft.
Oh, the thing about this, what's crazy is Nick Chubb, because of public perception, because of, public pressure, he had to say something. A guy that, BJ, last time I checked, I don't think I've ever heard Nick Chubb say anything. I mean, ever. Like, he's like the Kawhi Leonard of NFL play. I've never heard him say anything. His play speaks for him. But once again, I mean, you got a coach that has, I mean, forget lying. This dude wrote the book on lying. Good Lord. But it hasn't stopped him from being able to still go out there and get high. And I go back to this again. I don't think Nick Chubb did anything. I don't think Nick Chubb took money. But I do not know. So that's the thing is, BJ, we don't know. We don't know Nick Chubb. And in my mind, I don't think Nick Chubb did anything. But this is what happened when you open up your underworld infrastructure to a nut. This is what could potentially happen. Because when he speaks, lies or not, people listen. So I hope it comes out to be, much to do about nothing. But I did see something to where I think Georgia's compliance office is looking into the matter to see if they can, find some things. But yeah, I mean, Nick Chubb, one of the best running backs, not just in college, but since he stepped into the league, when you look at what he does for that Cleveland offense, I hope he is correct. I hope he's definitely telling the truth. And I'm not questioning, is he a liar or not? Because I don't know Nick Chubb. I do think he is telling the truth. I just wish that, his name did get dragged in this, but unfortunately it did.
Again, we'll see where this story goes. Maybe it goes nowhere. Again, as you said, BJ, Russ Probst, not exactly got the most sterling reputation out there of anybody around the football world there as well. We'll come back. We'll dive into some NFL news of note. A lot happening around the NFL today, including around one Dak Prescott. We'll hit that next. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hit us up on Twitter @Pigskin Radio. We are streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. You can join us there and love to hear from you here on this Tuesday afternoon. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you're with us here on this Tuesday. A lot of NFL news going on, including one Dak Prescott. Cowboys, 4-year deal, $160 million, $123 million guaranteed in that contract, including a $66 million signing bonus, the largest in NFL history. And I know a couple of years ago, Ben was saying, hey, guaranteed money, that's going to be the way to go. And $123 million of it guaranteed for Dak Prescott going to the Cowboys, or staying with the Cowboys, I should say.
Dak. When people ask, why should I bet on myself? Look at Dak Prescott. I know everybody. And then Dak Prescott is the second highest paid quarterback in the league. Hasn't won a league MVP. Hasn't won an NFC championship. Hasn't appeared in the Super Bowl. Hasn't been a first team All-Pro. But that star on your helmet means a lot. When people know why is the plan for the Dallas Cowboys, well, number one, the Dallas Cowboys is awful without him. But last year, if they would have signed him in the offseason, would have got him for $30 million. I want to compare his contract, though, to that of Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes signed a 10-year, $53 million. I mean, $503 million. No, that's up to $503. That's what he could potentially get. But he signed over 10 years of his life to a Kansas City Chiefs organization that just lost to a 43-year-old quarterback in the Super Bowl. He gets $171 million guaranteed of that contract. That gets $126 million guaranteed for 4 years. Dak's going to make almost $80 million in year one.
All right, let me ask you this, Ben, because the two massive contracts that everybody has talked about, obviously Pat Mahomes, a 10-year deal, as we've talked about, and then this deal with Dak. In your mind, is this deal with Dak a better deal, and maybe even the new standard setter, because it comes with more, I guess, control on his behalf, but also the chance to negotiate another contract in 4 years?
I'm going to ask you this, BJ. Were you the same person 10 years ago that you are today?
Like biologically, or?
Well, however you want, biologically, financially, systematically, automatically.
No.
So all I'm saying is one guy just signed for 10 years. The other guy just signed for 4. Right? 4 years. Somebody goes, hey, man, 4 years. Okay. $160 million deal, 126 guaranteed. We're going to give you $80 million in the first year, $66 million to sign. I'm like this. Not, hey, man, 10 years, $503 million. No, potentially $503. So for me, the thing is, how do I know I want to be anywhere in 10 years, let alone even playing football? Dak Prescott, number one, he's coming off injury. Number two, he has a no trade clause, no franchise tag clause. And he got the $40 million. So not Aaron Rodgers, who's the league MVP. Not Russell Wilson, not Deshaun Watson, not Lamar Jackson. Oh, God, Lamar Jackson is coming up. But the second, and I got to say this too, you got to use the leverage that you have, not just the player that you are. He is the starting quarterback for Dallas. That means something. Everyone knows who the starting quarterback for Dallas is, regardless of how they're playing. Unfortunately, that's throwing your helmet. It means something. Somebody said this. Tony Romo made $125 million in 11 years in Dallas. Dak is going to make $126 million in 4. All I'm saying is, people, bet on Dak made $30-something million last year, and he was hurt. He's going to make $80 million this year, and people going, it's Super Bowl or bust for the Dallas Cowboys. Since when? What would the Dallas Cowboys know about the Super? No, put them in the seats. Be the most talked about team in the NFL that's not going to do anything. Dak meets all those things. So shout out to Dak. It shows that. Think about it. Jerry Jones supposed to be this great negotiator. He just got duped. Him, Stephen Jones, because I just think that they think that they're in that window right now as far as like the team. But 4 years, 160, that's some cheese right there, Dak. I seen a picture of Dak and his brother hugging each other. I would have hugged them too. Like, man, give me a hug, bro.
But I mean, Kevin and Ben, I asked both of you this. We were talking about it during the show meeting. With Atlanta Falcons, the big talking point is Matt Ryan's contract and how much of it is still owed, how much of it is a season by season kind of requirement. If teams want more flexibility, I mean, Kevin, is this the new? I know you say Dak won, Jerry Jones lost, but you were able to keep some money, quote, off the books by allocating a lot of it as a signing bonus. Does that prevent teams from getting in kind of the Matt Ryan situation if that becomes more of a standard moving forward?
I mean, I think so. And I think that was one of the things with the signing bonus money is the average after the signing bonus. I mean, take $66 million off of that contract. You're 4 years under 100. That's very doable if you're an NFL franchise. So yeah, I think signing bonus is going to be, especially for quarterbacks, because they're kind of the cornerstone of your franchise. I don't think you're running around giving tackles $66 million signing bonuses or anything like that. But I do think, Dak got his, and the Cowboys got very friendly on their end as well, where it's like, hey, Dak will be 31 when this is over. If we don't like where he's at, we're not going to get stuck in a 10-year contract and a guy getting $40-50 million that we can't move. So I think it's going to work out good for both parties in this situation. So, yeah, I think as far as quarterbacks go, give them the signing bonus if you can and get that cap hit number down, so you can go out and supplement your roster with what you got left.
Yeah, and I think Dak just realized, like, most guys don't understand the business of football. They just play it. Dak was like, look, Dak probably went in and said, look, man, I don't care how much I make a year. I want my money. See, we get caught. He's making $40 million. No. Like, just take me, for example. Forget Dak for a second. Boom. Hey, man, Ben, we want to give you $15 million. Really? $15 million guaranteed? Yeah. All right. Boom. Give me a $12 million signing bonus, and you can break up $3 million because you got to pay me something, a game. Because people fail to realize this. Okay, you've been playing for league minimum your whole career, and you've been fine. Plus, Dak is in a different situation, BJ and Kevin, because he was making more money away from football than he was on the field. Like, he hasn't been making the most money he's made was last year under the franchise tag. But I told y'all Kirk Cousins was going to change how quarterbacks do this money. I mean, Kirk Cousins, since his last 2 years in Washington and his last 4 years in Minnesota, all his money is guaranteed. I don't do bump the signing bonus. I want all my money guaranteed. Like, that's what you're supposed to use. Use your leverage, man.
And again, good for Dak, $66 million signing bonus, $160 million contract. Jags exercising a franchise tag on Cam Robinson, BJ. I know he expected franchise tag for tackle. So average of the top 5 for 1 year. So around $14 million for a guy that I think a lot of people feel is underachieved in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by that. And maybe you look at Cam Robinson and you see, kind of the prototypical skills, and you think, well, look, maybe we don't want to move on from him this early in his professional career, but he's going to be getting paid. And Jacksonville certainly is in the market for a left tackle. I think you feel good about right tackle with Jawan Taylor out of Florida, who's done a really nice job. Cam's been inconsistent, and some of that may just be scheme. Some of that may just be youth. I know some who understand the nuances of the offensive line position better than me have suggested that perhaps Cam Robinson could be an option at guard. I know Jacksonville has at least had their eyes open with regards to Andrew Norwell's contract, which is overwhelming. I believe he is the highest paid player on the team by far. Now, former All-Pro, but he has not been consistently dominant in Jacksonville either. So maybe you see Cam Robinson as a guy that can be there at tackle. You at least know what you have, or can play guard. I will still say this, and this probably means you're no longer in the Trent Williams sweepstakes. I know there were some rumors that you might try to go after the star tackle. But I would still anticipate Jacksonville to get a guard relatively high in the draft. And remember, Jacksonville has four of the top 45 picks. 4 of the top 45 picks. And wouldn't surprise me if with one of those, Ben, you grab an Alex Leatherwood, a Liam Eckenberg, a Dylan Reduns, perhaps a Sam Cosmi. I think there's really good depth at tackle. So I don't think this means Jacksonville doesn't go tackle early in the draft.
Yeah, and I think this also means that Urban Meyer wants to have his influence on guys that's currently on the team. It's going to be much easier to instill like his cultures with the guys that's currently there. And Cam Robinson got a chance to add a lot of M's to his last name if he can go out there and protect the future of this franchise. It's going to be the first overall pick. I think that's what it's much easier to instill guys that's there because you bring in a new guy, with a bunch of money, attached to his name. I don't know if Urban Meyer can have the same staying power with him. So for Cam, hey man, whatever you did, consistent or inconsistent, it got you a fully guaranteed contract for 1 year.
And get some other news. Titans have traded Isaiah Wilson to Miami for a 7th-round pick. Bucks slap a franchise tag on Chris Godwin. Patriots make a trade for Trent Brown, and looks like Hunter Henry and Kenny Golladay headed to free agency. The Falcons also look like today some reports that they weren't expected to. Now looks like they're fully not going to franchise tag Keanu Neal, which means Keanu Neal is headed into free agency as well, a former first-round pick there by the Atlanta Falcons.
And a couple of thoughts. Isaiah Wilson has had some trouble. I remember interviewing him when he came out of Georgia. I really enjoyed the conversation with that young man. So I wish him the best, and I hope he can get things stabilized. And then with Keanu Neal, I know he was kind of a fan favorite in some respects, a guy who was a star in the SEC and was sort of in that William Moore mold, a safety that would come down and just put it to you. I've been a fan of Keanu, but I don't think this is a massive deal, if I'm being honest. I think when you look at the safety position, you feel like Damontae KZ is more of a playmaking safety, and you feel like, at least in theory, maybe it's easier to replace that in the box safety. I would keep an eye on Hamza Nasr-Ladin out of Florida State, a guy that's 6'4", 230, being talked about maybe in the second round range for Atlanta. Of course, you have Paris Ford, you have Tariq Thompson, you have Jacoby Stevens. You have a lot of really good safety prospects. So you'll miss Keanu, but I think that's a guy that you feel like you can come close to replacing his production. And I do think, Ben, this means Atlanta's probably going to go safety fairly early in the draft.
Oh, yeah, I do agree with the situation with Keanu Neal. It's more in the realm of a Jamal Adams playing the box, a guy that can stop the run, blitz, and not more of a liability in the passing game. Isaiah Wilson is always going to be a head scratcher. I know the Titans GM came out and said Isaiah Wilson had to decide if football is important enough to him. I think Coach Flores said, look, I can take this young guy who has more of a younger team than the Titans and say, I think I can mold him, because people already know this. Isaiah Wilson, if you are getting traded after your rookie year with a first-round pick, 2 words, Josh Rosen. You don't want to do that because you'll fade away. So I am happy that he gets a fresh start in a new place. And Keanu Neal, he had to test free agency. It happens. I mean, most guys have to test free agency. Somebody will snatch Keanu Neal because he does got some good tape, but he does have a Pro Bowl now with his time with the Falcons.
And let's quick look at some of the news and notes happening around the National Football League. We'll come back. We'll get to take 3 next because we are loaded up in hour number 2. We'll chat with Chrissy Freud of the Draft Network. Also, Rich Stiles is going to join us in hour 2 as well. The Players Championship down in Ponte Vedra this week. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you are with us here on the show. We'll chat with Chrissy Freud of the Draft Network coming up in hour number 2. She covers quarterbacks there for the draft. Got a new draft profile out for KJ Costello. She also has Zach Wilson ranked ahead of Trevor Lawrence. We'll ask her about that coming up in hour number 2. And Rich Stiles joins us here on 3 and Out in hour number 2, as well as we'll talk about the Players' Championship coming up this weekend. Bryson DeChambeau coming off a big win at the Arnold Palmer Invitational and trying to muscle out everybody there on the course. We'll talk to him about that coming up, including our installment number 2 of Rich Stiles with Rich Stiles. I really had fun with that last week. We'll do it again in hour number 2. So that being said, we got to move up take 3 a little bit. We'll do it now. Take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, take 1. Florida State starting spring ball today. What is the floor and or ceiling for the Noles in 2021?
I think you're looking at probably somewhere between 5 and 8 wins. And I want to say this. I think Florida State's moving in the right direction. Had a very impressive crop of transfers come in. Their recruiting for the future years is looking really good, but it's going to take some time. You know, rebuilds do. Willie Taggart didn't get enough time. He should have been given more time. And Mike Norvell's going to need a couple of years. I look at this program and I expect progress to be made, Ben, in Q1, but I do think the schedule is brutal. And that's why I don't think it's realistic to expect Florida State to have 9-10 wins. They open with Notre Dame. You play at North Carolina. You play at Clemson. You have Miami. You play at Florida. It is a really difficult schedule. Now, we'll see what McKenzie Milton can do, but I could see Florida State going 5-7, and I could see that happening while also still appreciating the progress being made moving forward. But I think, 6-6, 7-5, somewhere in that range would probably be my realistic guess at this point.
I will lean more towards 6-6, BJ, because you're gonna have those 50-50 games. That's gonna be decided upon, D-line, O-line play, and that does not favor Florida State right now when they're gonna be definitely looking to be able to have a better. Marvin Wilson didn't have the season he was supposed to have last year, but he still got big shoes to fill as far as like replacing him. But I do agree. When you talk about Notre Dame, you talk about Jacksonville State, which was a better game than it should have been last year. So you want to chalk that up. As a win. Louisville gonna have, a high-powered offense. UNC gonna be trying to get back. Clemson is Clemson. North Carolina State is playing well. Miami gonna probably have a healthy, a healthy offense coming back at that point with De'Aaron King. Florida, we'll see what happens with that game depending on how they play. So yeah, I think 6-6, maybe 7-5. Because I think that what happens is people forget you don't have quality O-line and D-line play. It is going to be hard to stay in any game, and that is probably like the key position, or the key factors for the Florida State team with McKenzie Milton having to stay upright for 12 games.
Yeah, certainly going to be a big factor there. I think, as you said, BJ, 500. I think over that is hard to project because, again, Florida State was one of the worst offensive lines in the country last year, and while they did get a bunch of transfers, you're still going up against the Clemsons. Louisville might be a little bit better. Boston College, you just don't know what team's going to show up. I was going to say they need to get their swag back, but they had that with Willie Taggart. They had the swag and got decimated by Virginia Tech in that first game and kind of never got it back.
Well, you just got to build the depth up. And I know, for programs like Miami and Florida State and Nebraska and, programs that in the 80s and 90s were completely just unprecedentedly dominant. That's always the shadow, but that's not realistic right now. I think it's going to be a multi-year rebuild in Tallahassee.
Yeah, you're constantly chasing the better days in some respects there if you're Florida State. Take 2, fellas. No in-person combine happening this year for the National Football League, but what is your favorite combine moment from years past?
For me, it's big guys running fast. And we are a society that is fascinated with the 40-yard dash, right? Not a lot of us have a great understanding of some of the other drills. Like, that doing 225 pounds 25 times is very impressive, but most people can't do one. So it's hard for us to kind of even process or think about that, much less compare it and contrast it across an athletic spectrum. You know, I have no idea what a good 3-cone drill time is. I have no idea what a 20-yard shuttle time is. But every person in America thinks they run a 4.55 or did when they were in high school. And I think sometimes you take for granted how athletic some of these guys are, even the big guys. And it's amazing to me when you see a Mekhi Becton out of Louisville who's 360 pounds and runs a 5-second 40-yard dash, or you see a Montez Sweat who's a defensive end and he runs a 4.48 or whatever it was, and you're looking around going, what is this even serious? I mean, I think about the overall athletic profile of a guy like Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa. He was doing backflips and jumping out of pools and like landing on his feet and ran a 4.8 or 4.9 40-yard dash as an offensive lineman. So for me, it's the big guys doing work in the 40-yard dash because it's something that immediately resonates with us.
I mean, sticking with the big guys running fast. I remember when the Ontario Poe got out there, I'm like, this dude, what is he gonna do? And he was moving. I think he ran like a 4.9 at like 3.40, 3.45 or something like that. I remember when Jeff Okudah, quarterback out of Ohio State, came right at, because those interviews are pretty, they were trying to tell him how you do a lot of holding Ohio State. He was like, I also had 0 defensive pass interference. You might want to look at the tape again. You might see something else. Like Kevin Thomas, who you think you talking to? You think it's easy sitting in this big seat? Well, come sit up here, Playboy. Not today. No, but BJ, that running fast and things of that nature. No, my best moments is when old linemen do 12 reps. They're like, hey man, he did less than, and they still go top 10. Who cares? Like, can I move another man? Yes. Am I a workout warrior? No. Because I'm just saying, people get you caught up in this. Hey man, I mean, and the thing about it is too, BJ, these 4.1s, 4.2s, 4.3s. Fast guys run fast.
Whoa. What 4.1s are you talking about?
I mean, what's Deion Sanders' alter ego?
Well, no, hold on. You said 4.1s plural. I think Deion ran a 4.19.
That's a lie. And nobody, they didn't have cameras back then. You always trying to take Deion's side. I think Deion might have ran. That's what they said. Like we in the barbershop. That's what Keith and them said. No, I'm just saying. I just think that when you talk about big guys running fast and all this different stuff, what about when they don't do well and still get drafted high? My best moments is the freaking combine is a fraud. That stuff doesn't mean anything. Nonsense.
That's not really a moment as much as it is a take, I guess. But
Kevin, what's your best moment? You didn't see a whole bunch of them.
No, mine is pretty simple, man. It's like kind of put it in perspective. Like BJ said, like the high jump, it is like the vertical leap, like it is what it is. But when you watch NFL Network, it's to this day is like my favorite one. It's like Rich Eisen gets out there and runs the 40 in his suit. That's fun. You're like, okay, that's not bad. He's in a suit, his wing tips, and he's he does okay. And then they overlaid him against it might have been like Pat White or I don't know who it was, or Noel Devine or somebody. He's like, and it's just like a rocket being shot out of a gun, and you see Rich Eisen bebopping along. You're like, well, I mean, that's to be understood. Rich Eisen is like in his, I think, late 50s, early 60s, and that guy's a premier athlete. Then they put Rich Eisen overlaid against BJ Raji. And BJ Raji is like 350 pounds. And like you and I look at him and go, okay, that is a huge human being. He probably doesn't run very fast. Like, we get it. And then you watch the overlay, and that man is pulling away in the 40-yard dash at 350 pounds. And I think that gives you kind of that visual perspective of just how fast those guys are moving there at the combine, even though it may not look like you're like, oh, look at these. They should just take these people to say, they're not that big, they're not that fast. Okay, I want you to stand with your back to them, and I want them to run as fast as they can. And last minute, I want you to turn around and see if your whole life don't flash before your eyes. Probably will. Take 3 today. A good Christian holiday for our Christian Go Kel. It's not a Christian holiday. It's Christian's favorite thing to find the. I did mess it all up. It is National Get Over It Day, and Christian should get over it that I messed it up. But where's the moment that a particular fan base needs to go ahead and get over it here on National Get Over It Day?
All right, there was some debate in the show meeting if Christian's in there, and I want to explain my interpretation of what this means. Because when I hear this, I don't think 2nd and 26 or 28-3, because those are things you can't get over.
Yes,
and
you can.
shouldn't. No, you shouldn't get over that. You were up 28-3 in the second half of the Super Bowl. You should, or whatever it was, you should not get over that. That is a devastating, unovercomable issue. Much like having Alabama beaten for the national championship and then giving up a blown coverage or whatever. That is what it is. There's reason to be frustrated for that. When I think of things like get over it day, I think about things that are no longer relevant. And I told, maybe it's just a pet peeve of mine that I keep hearing. Anytime I read a report or a projection in a mock draft of the Falcons taking an edge rusher, or anytime I mention it, I immediately get hit with, or I read, dude, they took Jamal Anderson out of Arkansas. And I'm like, that was 15 years ago. Like, just because you had a bad pick at edge rusher 15 years ago that didn't work out for whatever reason doesn't mean you can never draft a defensive end ever again.
I'll agree with you, BJ, because of the fact that Thomas Dimitroff is no longer with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, if Thomas Dimitroff was still the GM, that is extremely relevant because that's a decision he made, and we should absolutely talk about it. But he's no longer the GM, so get over it.
Yeah, and look, you got Terry Fontenot in there. Jamal Anderson didn't work out. You now have a new era, a new wave. I mean, Jamal Anderson's probably 40 years old now. I mean, you're looking at guys like Gregory Rousseau and Kwity Paye and Peyton Turner and Quincy Roche. There's some really exciting edge rushing prospects.
Just for example, the two ones that we put out were Tyler Simmons was offsides, and because like you said, BJ, it doesn't come down to one play in a national championship game. And then the Saints pass interference or no call against the Rams. Saints fans just need to get over it.
I don't know. I can understand being mad about those things, but I cannot understand being hesitant to draft a defensive end because a dude you picked 15 years ago didn't work out.
Okay, I mean, look, we're in the beautiful state of Georgia, and I'm just gonna talk to the Georgia fans real quick. Okay, I'm just gonna talk to them real fast. All right.
Ben, if you're going where I think you're going, I just want you to know we will never be over that.
No. See, that's what I'm saying, though, Christian. Think about it. I know what you're talking about, but I'm just saying this is why Georgia should get over it. You get to see certain moments every season to make you go, God, like Christian is talking about 2002, right? What about Joshua Dobbs? He threw a Hail Mary.
Man, those are apples to oranges. Georgia lost.
No.
You were the only loss in 2002.
No.
Compare yourself.
This is what I'm saying. No. This is what I'm saying.
You are way above Josh Dobbs.
No. You're missing what I'm saying. See, the ball bounced off the top of the helmet against Auburn. Well, who were they playing? Georgia. How you lose the Boise State? Power Ranger uniform. It's always a reason. And I like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, all I'm saying, Christian, is what happened in the national championship is a microcosm of what happens to Georgia football teams. I don't know what it is. I be like, they're gonna finally do it. This is what I told producer Jim. I said, Georgia's about to win the national championship, and I'm about to quit. I will not live in Georgia. I am going to quit. No, I told Jim this. I said, Jim, Georgia just got a sack. And Jim said, oh, my God, they're going to do it. I said, if they do it, I'm not even riding back with you to the coast of Georgia. I'm just going to find me somewhere to stay right here. I got family member up here. I ain't going back. Why? For two reasons. What? Christian Gokel. Can't face it. Not doing it. Can't do it. So for me, it's just get over because it's the moment. Every single year it's the moment that Georgia goes, see?
Do you think Georgia football fans need to just get over being Georgia football fans?
No. They need to get over the fact that they know what it is. Liver tastes like liver.
We need to accept who we are.
Yeah, Christian.
Oh, gosh.
Christian. Listen, have you ever seen somebody 5 feet dunk over Shaq? It's not gonna happen. It's not a Shaq can see him coming.
Yeah. Flip this audio, please. We're saving this audio.
Listen. All I'm saying is, I can train for 10 years. I'm still not going to beat Usain Bolt. Certain things, it's not going to happen.
Well, that being said,
Eat it.
My get over it is 28-3 because it happened. This time. Yes, you can.
get over
And
that.
if you can't get over it, that's your problem.
I can't get over 28
That's
to
your
3.
problem.
I
Atlanta fans can't get over it. Look at BJ crying in the
I
screen.
can't get over 28 to 3.
He's a Jaguars.
Get
fan.
over it.
Yeah, dude, I'm not even a Falcons fan, but how do you get over being a historically average to below average organization, having an iconic signature Super Bowl win over Tom Brady and blowing a 28-3 lead? You don't get over that.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. You need to because now every Atlanta fan sounds like Christian Gokel. Yeah, it's just a typical Atlanta fan. We can't get a. Why do we? What?
I'm over you.
Good. Christian's over me, and this
Leaving me-
segment is
leave-
over.
Kevin ghosted me. That's what
Get
I'm
over this segment. It's 3 and Out. Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben coming up in hour number 2. We'll chat with Chrissy Freud of the Draft Network. She'll join us on the flip side here. We'll look at the quarterbacks in the draft, and recently published her draft profile on KJ Costello, and also has Zach Wilson atop her quarterback board there as well. We'll talk to her about that coming up in hour number 2. Also, Rich Stiles will join us coming up here in hour number 2 as well. We'll look at the Players' Championship coming up this weekend, and Bryson DeChambeau winning the Arnold Palmer Invitational, including hammering out a 370-yard drive, muscling up on the old golf course out there. We'll get to that coming up in the back half of hour number 2. But Chrissy Freud joins us from the Draft Network. When we return, it's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you are with us here on this Tuesday. A lot to get to here on the show in hour number 2. We'll talk some golf with Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, coming up in about 30 minutes here on the show. But certainly counting down to the draft. It's a draft loaded up with quarterbacks. Our next guest here to talk about just that from the Draft Network, Christy Freud joins us. Christy, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Hey, we're doing fantastic. And as you look at these quarterbacks, how deep, before we get into some specific guys, is this quarterback class, do you think, in terms of just bona fide, legit, long-term starting talent?
Honestly, I think it's a very deep quarterback class. I mean, there were a few guys that are in my rankings around, like, I'd say maybe 7 through 10 that I was kind of down on for years, really watching them in college. I think that they did some things that really just impressed me at the Senior Bowl, and then especially Kellen Mond in that last season, I really, really elevated. That was one quarterback that I never really, never really found much of anything good to write about, to be honest with him. But he really made me eat my words of this past season. A lot of development there on just his end as a leader and a player. And that's something that we talked about in one of the pieces that I published at the Draft Network, which was the debut piece of our quarterback series this year.
And again, I know Zach Wilson's a guy that's gotten a lot of pub here, moving up draft boards. What has been all the intrigue with a lot of people saying he might be the best quarterback in the draft, even ahead of Trevor Lawrence in some cases?
Yeah, it's funny because I think, I'm not going to claim this because I'm not totally sure, but I think that I was actually the first person to put him at number 1, which is why Twitter exploded whenever I released those rankings. And it was funny because I want to say 2 days or so after all these reports emerged of all these NFL teams that were saying that they would take Wilson over Lawrence, and there were at least a few of them. And it seems like ever since then, there have been a lot more analysts and just people in general that have put Zach Wilson ahead of Trevor Lawrence. And I've noticed whenever I'll republish the rankings or make a bigger board or something, I don't hear nearly the reaction that I was hearing from people the first time that I published it. I think that really when I look at Zach Wilson, I see a lot of Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not one to really like to make player comparisons this early because I mean you really just never know. But there are some similarities between their game that I see, and I think Wilson. I think that he's a guy that can go off script for you. I think that he's been consistent. I think he's maintained that consistency, and I think that he's consistently trended upward, and that's something that you really want to see because in quarterbacks across all levels, you don't really want someone who's constantly yo-yoing, which is something that I've seen very often across the SEC and very often just across college football in general. I thought that his completion percentage, I want to say it was somewhere around 74%, really just highlighted his accuracy, and his ball placement has been something that's been really interesting to watch to me because, I mean, he'll step up and make some of these throws into these impossibly tight windows down the sideline, which is incredibly hard to do. And it's hard to find a quarterback who can do that and be successful with it more than just from time to time. And I think he has that. And one thing people want to say, this is kind of an argument that I've seen, is it's just like, oh, he's played against lesser competition. But I mean, I don't understand why it's not more common sense to people that when they're playing in those against those teams that we deem to be lesser competition, well, typically their supporting cast is also lesser than the guys who are in the ACC or the SEC. So it goes both ways. And to me, I think that it kind of balances out. It's not just this argument of, oh, he's playing lesser competition. And then when it comes to the argument between him and Lawrence, something I kind of elaborated on when I published the rankings is it's very close. It's by a hair. To put Zach Wilson above Trevor Lawrence is not to say that Trevor Lawrence is much worse or that there's some huge gap. And that's kind of the reaction that I see from people is if you have 1-2 Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, it's that somehow the person who's releasing those rankings is implying that one is much, much better than the other. I mean, to me, Trevor Lawrence brings about just about every single physical tool that you could have. Like, he looks like he was created in the lab to purposely be a quarterback, in my opinion. The only thing that I really knock him for is the fact that he gets kind of locks onto one receiver from time to time, but even that is something that doesn't happen all the time. And yeah, I mean, the thing too about Lawrence is there's a lot of people that say, oh, he's a generational player. Maybe he does end up being that, but I can't help but think about some of the times that he, like whenever I watched the national championship, I was there. Because Joe Burrow is another guy that we deem to be a generational player. I think that he's shown that on his end. But you have to ask the question, why is Joe Burrow outplaying the hell out of Trevor Lawrence in the national championship if they're both supposed to be generational players? I mean, they should be pretty neck and neck, and I just didn't see it that way. Although one thing I will say is that Trevor Lawrence showed a type of mobility that I didn't necessarily fully appreciate at that time. In the national championships, that's something that I kind of give him big ups for as well. But yeah, I think that Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence are very close, but maybe Zach Wilson just checks half a box more for me and ultimately has a better career long term.
And you mentioned the comparison to Mahomes. Do you think 10 years ago Wilson's stock would have been this high, or is he sort of reflective of having a great skill set and kind of the way football is evolving at the same time?
Yeah, I think it has to do with the skill set and the way that that football is evolving. I think that he's a kind of guy that'll bring the mobility that you need. Like I said, he can work off script, and there's not when I look at him, there's just not that much that I knock him for. I think he has just a rare ability to do some things, like I said, throwing into those tight windows that a lot of quarterbacks can't do on a consistent basis.
Wilson's last game, his bowl game, I was trying to bring up the stats against UCF. He threw for like 400-something yards, had 4 or 5 touchdowns. Do you think that there's momentum for a prospect that comes at the end of a season particularly? And do you think maybe that's been the case to a certain extent with Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, I think to an extent, I think just finishing off on a high note is a good thing. But at the same time, I mean, Kyle Trask was a quarterback that I was high on for a while, and he took a pretty big nosedive there at the end of the season. And of course, I mean, there's some things that I've gone through his tape and looked at that I kind of fault him for now more than I did maybe during the season, because you're watching so many guys and it's kind of harder to tell, and you can just take more time in general during the off season. But at the end of the day, like, that may still not be fully representative of how he's going to transition on into the NFL. So I think that you never truly know.
And Christian, when you think about, obviously, you talk about Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence being the cream of the crop. Justin Fields, I think, is right there in that top tier. But out of Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and Kyle Trask, as you mentioned, nosedive, who you think is the biggest project out of those 3 guys?
Who makes the biggest project out of those 3?
Out of Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and Kyle Trask, who's the biggest project?
Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and Kyle Trask. Those are the 3, right? So I want to make sure that I'm hearing you correctly.
Yes.
Honestly, I would say, as far as just an intriguing project, I think that Trey Lance is kind of one, because we only saw him play that one game, and then he's playing in the FCS. But he's an interesting one to me, just because I was talking to his head coach, and one thing we kind of talked about was the physicality that he plays with. He's like a quarterback with a linebacker mentality. So I think he's going to be a fun one to watch evolve at the next level, depending on where he lands. But as far as Kyle Trask goes, the thing about him to me is that he showed all of his upside at the beginning of the season and then started to falter toward the end of the season. Just some decision-making things, especially to me. And the other thing I'm noticing with him is his lower body mechanics. I think some issues there kind of affect him in the deep passing game, and that's something that's going to have to be fixed. So I'm curious to see just which Kyle Trask that we ultimately end up with in the NFL.
And even following up on that, when you look at the fact that every last one of these guys are going to have a system that caters to what they do, you mentioned Zach Wilson is a guy that can improvise. Which one of these guys is going to have to really have a coach that benefits what they do well as a system that can kind of like give them chance to develop and let their skill set really come out and show like down the line?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I was saying that when you talk about all these guys, no matter what quarterback is going to be, from Trevor Lawrence to Kyle Trask, every last one of these guys is going to have to go to a system that utilizes what they do skill set wise. But which one is going to have a scheme right now that they can kind of hide them while they kind of like let their skill set develop?
I think that Jamie Newman could be one of those guys, and I think that Shane Buechele, I think that him in general, I think that he's probably going to be like a career backup guy, but I think that we saw him kind of upgrade a bit at SMU, but I think it's going to take a very particular scheme for him to be that number 2 guy and to be able to thrive as much as he can there.
Christy Freud, the Draft Network, joining us here on 3 and Out. I know we've talked a lot about Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, and seems like there's a run on quarterbacks coming. How many of these guys are going to go in the first round? How many of these guys you think are actual first round type talents?
I'd say that we see maybe 4 or 5 go in the first round. I mean, in my rankings, I'd say that would be Mac Jones, maybe the last one taken in the first round. I think that they're all, just based off of the film that I've watched, I mean, I think that they're all very deserving. I think that they're guys who can probably elevate a team at the next level the first time they take the field. I think maybe at least 3 of them, I would say, are going to be day one starters or have the potential to be day one starters at least. I think so the last one that I mentioned would be Mac Jones. And I think that it's so interesting when you look into that argument in general, because the fun thing for me covering the SEC, watching them each season at Alabama, is that team has the ability to reload unlike anything that I've ever seen. They recruit very well. And so you take Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones, they're 2 very different quarterbacks. But I talked to a source there, and one thing that we just kind of went over is that, I mean, Tagovailoa, when you look at him, he has more natural ability to me. I think that things come more naturally to him, and he certainly has an ability to evade pressure and create plays with his legs that Mac Jones will never have. But that's something that Mac is very aware of, and something that I talked about with him as well. And the good factors in his game come from just his dedication to learning and his mental quickness and his ability to process mentally, which is something that is extremely important at the next level. And so he did tell me that there were some mechanical things that he was trying to work on, that he felt like he kind of improved that at the Senior Bowl. But I'm very excited to see, just with someone with that kind of mindset and that kind of ability to make things happen, just even purely from a mental standpoint, I think that that's something that is going to bring him a lot of success at the next level.
Finally, I wanted to ask you about KJ Costello, a guy that had a really proficient career at Stanford, came over to Mississippi State, and after week 1 against LSU, a lot of people were saying this is going to be a first-round pick. How do you evaluate a guy like KJ Costello as maybe a next-tier quarterback that obviously isn't getting the attention of some of the other guys?
Well, I'll tell you that I did talk to Mike Leach for a little while ahead of the season. We were working on a story on Anthony Gordon, actually, who was, I want to say, the last guy that he had before he had Costello. But the one thing that came up in conversation was that he was not able to get to Starkville for a while. I mean, and that goes for every team in college football. I mean, no coaches were able to be personally around their players for a long time. And when you look at a team like Mississippi State, this is a team that before this year was heavily centered around the run game and heavily centered specifically on a power running quarterback. So when you take that, and part of the teams are the guys that are there, that have been there, that are returners, they're used to that. And you take the air raid, which could not be any more different than the scheme that Mississippi State was running before. There's just naturally there's going to be some problems. And then you take the COVID thing, and that makes it a million times harder than it already was going to be. Just installing that and changing the whole culture there with that. So I think that another thing, too, is that Mississippi State had one of the youngest teams in the SEC. I think maybe second to only LSU, which is very comparable there. And so you have the veteran quarterback, but a lot of the guys around him are very inexperienced, and they're trying to learn this new scheme in the middle of COVID. And so I think that it was just a matter of kind of trying to work out the kinks. And you had that one first game that was really good around with LSU. And then you have teams that start dropping 8. That's something that me and KJ talked about, is that teams are able to kind of defeat that by dropping 8. And then the only real option that there is to check it down to your running back. And then they had the mass exodus of players, which didn't help at all. And then Kylan Hill, who is that feature back there, is gone now. So KJ has basically no weapons. His offensive line was, to me, not good at all throughout the year. And the thing that's funny to me is that people want to say that first game against LSU, it's like, oh, well, KJ Costello was benefiting from the LSU secondary not having its feet under it and Derek Stingley Jr. not being there. Well, no, not necessarily, because, I mean, there were several drop passes that I saw on there. There was at least one interception of those 2 that were thrown that were not his fault. And the offensive line was like snapping the ball way too high and snapping the ball into his face on some of those plays. So it's not like he wasn't dealing with any adversity there whenever he hung 623 yards on LSU. I think that he's a guy who maintains his platform well. I think he shifts his weight well. I think in general, he has the ability to be very accurate. He was placing the ball into some tight windows, throwing with touch again in the game against LSU that I saw. And I think that that he was just in an unfortunate situation at Mississippi State, and that it kind of just all, before you knew it, in his words, especially, that the whole thing was just turned on its head. But I get the sense that this season was not necessarily representative of who he is as a quarterback, and I think that it was a hard one for Mississippi State. But if you look at Mississippi State toward the end of the season, the offense finally started to find its identity, and those last few games, there were winnable games in there, and you could see that they were strengthening. And so it comes kind of down to the question of, was Will Rogers actually that good toward the end of the season, or is he purely benefiting off of the team gaining more experience?
Chrissy Freud, the Draft Network, our guest here on 3 and Out. Chrissy, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it. Chrissy Freud joining us here on 3 and Out. We've got more to come all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Rich Stiles will join us coming up in about 15 minutes here on 3 and Out. Look at the Players Championship coming up. Bryson DeChambeau just ruling the Arnold Palmer Invitational. We'll get to that coming up in just a little bit. But BJ, we're talking about quarterbacks a little bit last segment, looking ahead to some quarterbacks in the future. You got a piece up on McKenzie Milton there, Florida State, going to be an integral part of the Mike Norvell rebuild. You don't hear rebuild in Florida State too often, but make no mistake, they are certainly in the middle of that.
They are, and I think kind of understanding that from the outside looking in is the first kind of step towards Florida State. I don't want to say getting back, but Florida State regaining some national footing. But yeah, the addition of McKenzie Milton is a huge deal. I think people around the country have even forgotten a little bit about all that he accomplished. When he was at UCF, he had 8,653 passing yards, 72 passing touchdowns, over 1,000 rushing yards, and 20 more rushing scores. He is the only two-time AAC, or as you like to say, Kevin, AC Offensive Player of the Year ever. And in both of those seasons, he ranked in the top 10 nationally in passer rating. The things that he has accomplished statistically, pretty unparalleled. Only 8 quarterbacks this millennium have had a season with a passer rating of 175 and 45 total touchdowns. Those quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Tua Tagovailoa, Kyle Trask, and McKenzie Milton. So this young man's done a lot. Now, as incredible as that is, what he's overcome is even more incredible. Had just a terrifying knee injury that apparently required doctors to restore emergency blood flow, and they took a vein from his healthy leg and took it out and put it into his injured leg, and had multiple procedures, multiple surgeries, obviously a grueling rehabilitation, but he's fully clear. I mean, he's clear and good to go. And, Florida State last year, I want to say this. I think Jordan Travis did a really good job. I really do. Behind an offensive line that was a work in progress. Travis was a Louisville transfer, and he was not overwhelmingly polished as a passer. And you had an offense that was limited up front, limited at receiver. So a lot of the production for Florida State just ended up being kind of let Travis try to figure it out. And I think he did a really nice job. I think he's a great football player. But Milton gives Florida State they haven't had been since maybe EJ or Jameis Winston and then EJ Manuel. You think about stability at quarterback, star power at quarterback. You got to protect this young man. I mean, he's had a serious knee injury, but I think Florida State getting him is a pretty big deal, and I think he accelerates kind of the rebuilding process a little bit there in Tallahassee.
Yeah, BJ, which posed the question to make, is can they protect him? I mean, because everything you talk about with McKenzie Milton is when he's being protected. Obviously, incredible dual threat quarterback that's more of a thrower than a runner, even though he's a really, really good runner. But I mean, you're talking about a Florida State offense that averaged 25.8 points a game, 5.5 yards per play. They haven't averaged 30 points a game, BJ, in 4 consecutive seasons, and that kind of shows when you talk about the record. But then you go to the other side. Defense allowing 36 points per game, gave up 6.47 yards a play, most in the ACC. 10 sacks on defense. That's the fact that Florida State had 10 sacks, collectively on defense last year shows that their main focus has to be the offensive and defensive line. Go get some big time. Elijah, the transfer portal is going to be huge. Jermaine Johnson going to have a lot to do with that. But once again, BJ, we talk about. You talked about something earlier with 2022, but having something to build on in 2021. I think it's from 87 to 2017. Florida State never had nothing less than a 6-game winning. I mean, it never lost. I mean, never. Always had at least 6 wins or more. I don't think they've had that since 2018. And I think what happens is we talk about a team like Florida State. Part of that, I put them in that big 3. Them, Miami, Florida. They need to be good, not just for the state, but for college football as a whole, not just their position in the ACC. I think they got a good coach, definitely got a great quarterback in McKenzie Milton, got to rebuild on both sides of the ball. But then you talk about that identity of Florida State. That's the main thing. What is going to be their identity? Probably going to be ran through the offense, but I just think that the spring is going to tell a lot. Going to have to protect McKenzie. Ain't going to be doing much in the spring, but, I mean, BJ, out the gate, Notre Dame. So you're going to learn a lot about this squad from the opening game, and I just think that for Florida State to go where they need to go, unfortunately, McKenzie, they will go as McKenzie Milton goes. That's kind of how they wanted UCF, even though that defense was really, really good. I think Brandon Moore, who came over from UCF, played with McKenzie down there at UCF. So you got some really, really good transfers coming in, BJ. But those guys are going to be asked to instill the culture, and they just getting there because most of those guys coming from either big time conferences, big time schools, or programs that's on the uptick.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see where the appetite of the fan base is with this thing. BJ, obviously, Mike Norvell takes over in a pandemic-stricken season. You have a lot of opt-outs, and just 2020 for everybody is what it is. But you just ran a guy in Willie Taggart after a couple of seasons for not kind of elevating the profile, so to speak, of Florida State and getting it back where it needs to go. What is the appetite for build and wait with Mike Norvell in a league that, again, you're chasing down Clemson, but Boston College is getting better. NC State is getting better. It's not as if it's just Florida State, Clemson, and everybody else anymore right now.
It's a very good point about the Atlantic. I think Louisville will bounce back. NC State should be a preseason top 25 team. Boston College is right there. Syracuse has some work to do. Wake Forest is interesting, but Florida State is not at the top of this division. And I'm not even talking about Clemson. They're not second or third right now. I would describe this season for Florida State as year one for Mike Norvell, because last year you didn't have spring ball like a lot of people. You had the opt-outs. You had 2020. It was very difficult, as it was for everybody. But I think this is year one. Florida State played football last season with a limited roster, a scheme that was not able to kind of be at its full, most robust in terms of options, throwing the ball downfield. And I think now you feel like you can go through more of that. Willie Taggart should not have been fired when he was fired. That was a program that had never, in terms of this generation, experienced losing. They had never experienced it. And I think the whole program and the supporters of Florida State kind of overreacted and lost it and didn't know how to handle rebuilding. And Willie Taggart unfortunately got fired, but I think you got to give Mike Norvell some time. I do agree with some of the things you mentioned, Ben. What Mike Norvell and his staff did was they tried to accelerate the rebuilding process by getting grad transfers. Florida State got the most grad transfers of any Power 5 school, and the reason for that is they needed some juniors and seniors. Florida State every year is going to have a lot of guys go to the pros, like Florida, like Miami, and the Noles were already looking at a pretty thin senior class, so they needed to get some experience. I think there's a lot of talent on this roster. Kalen DeLoach out of the Savannah area is a very talented player. You're going to see a lot more of. I think this team scares you if you're a Florida, if you're a Miami, if you're an NC State. You're looking and going, if they figure it out, they're going to be something serious to deal with. But I think it's going to be a game by game process. I agree, Ben. A lot of it's going to come down to McKenzie Milton, and the name you mentioned might be even in some ways more impactful than Milton, and that's Jermaine Johnson, who Georgia fans know was a good edge rusher for the Dogs. The Noles, since Brian Burns, have not been good at rushing the passer. They were really, really bad, quite frankly, a year ago for whatever reason, scheme, whatever, at rushing the passer. Johnson gives them a bona fide star edge rusher, and I think if Milton can stabilize things, if Johnson can provide a spark up front, the talent is there for Florida State, but I look at this as the depth might not be, and Ben, the familiarity within the scheme. I look at this as year one for Mike Norvell in Tallahassee.
No, I agree. I think what happens is, too, though, BJ, people see Florida State, infrastructure, big-time program in the country, big-time program in the ACC. You're just going to pick up where you left off. Well, where you left off, is a guy that you only gave a year and a half and will attack. That's what you left off. That's what Mike Norvell was, inherited. Tamarion Terry, and obviously you're talking about Marvin Wilson coming back. But once again, that's two guys. It's going to be a team effort. And I think if you think about the Florida State team, as you mentioned, yes, they're not going to be a game-by-game team. They're going to be a quarter-by-quarter. This team is different, quarter-by-quarter. You watch Florida State the first half, they could be winning by 20. You can turn on the TV in the second half, and you can go, what in the world happened? So I think Norvell learned a lot about himself last year. Number one, you talk about a fan base that's dying for a winner again because you wanted the big-time programs in the country. And I just think that now these grad transfers can help, resonate his message. Listen, fellas, they're coming from Georgia, South Carolina, UCF, Arkansas. So they're coming from big-time programs. I think, BJ, if they can get on the road, very, very impressive what they did against North Carolina last year. But you also had Jacksonville State where they had to scratch and claw. So we'll see what happens. But I definitely think Florida State going to be one of those teams to where they do not want to be bottom feeders this year in the ACC. Guarantee that.
And again, you can check out BJ's piece there, southernpigskin.com, on Mackenzie Milton as Florida State starts spring practice today. We'll come back, switch gears, talk a little golf. Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, will join us. Players Championship coming up this weekend. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you are with us here on the program. And again, each week on the show, we talk with our next guest, Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys golf show. Each week here for his weekly Style Points, as we are getting closer to the Masters and Augusta. We got the Players Championship coming up this week, as well as Rich joins us here on 3 and Out. Rich, before we get to the players, I want to talk about Bryson DeChambeau. Obviously, just bombed the Arnold Palmer Invitational, hit a 370-yard drive where nobody else could put it, and now you're hearing, seeing some tweets that maybe they're going to have internal out of bounds at the Players Championship this week to try to, I guess, keep him from cutting off some of those holes. What do you make of Bryson DeChambeau and his performance there at the Arnold Palmer?
Well, it was obviously a great performance because he won. He does push the envelope on rules and tactics. One of his goals, obviously, prior to the Arnold Palmer, was to drive that hole, which he did twice. Weather was obviously in his favor, and he's already talking about what he might do on 18. So he studies the golf courses. This is what I find interesting. This guy studies stuff that nobody else has studied. They call him the mad scientist, the weird scientist. But anyway, he does it, and then he tries to do it. And one of his goals at the Players is on 18 is to go across the water and then go back across the water instead of trying to hit it into a narrow fairway. Whether or not they'll let him do that or not, I don't know. And that may be exactly what you read to me just prior to talking about Bryson.
Yeah, and you talk about Bryson proofing, and again, that's ingenuity, I guess, of utilizing the entirety of the golf course, right? I mean, you see guys, and I watched a video of him there at number 6 at Bay Hill, and it's, 340 to carry the water. There's not a lot of guys that can do that, and you see where 99% of the shots go, and he's 180 yards ahead of that by cutting off all the water. I mean, is this guy ingenious, or is this a guy that the PGA looks like hey, this is not really what we had in mind? We're going to come up with some rules to stop all this.
I think both. I think he's strong. He's took a lot of time to build his body up and to have all those protein shakes. And I don't see anybody there with any protein shakes right now, including myself. But he has built his body up where he can do that in his swing speed, and he can carry those kind of shots. And occasionally those will win golf tournaments. But the bottom line is, it's not how far you drive. Yes, it is exciting. But we had John Daly when that happened. We had Freddie Couples. We've had other guys. Rory McIlroy can drive it that far, and other guys that can do it. But unfortunately, he is getting all of the publicity now, and he's trying to change some things to kind of test the results of the PGA Tour as far as what he would like to do. And I think they may try and corral him, so to speak, so he's not able to be so free will out there.
Rich, what are the big storylines as we look ahead to one of the most important tournaments on the schedule, the TPC down in Ponte Vedra?
Well, it's interesting that I can't believe it's been a year since the pandemic has started. Remember, we had Thursday of the Players, and then Friday morning, everything was canceled. And we went through that dark period where no golf was being played. But I think some of the storylines is, what is Bryson going to do? WWBD, I guess, is what you would call it. I think, who's going to come out ahead? This is a big tournament. I mean, a lot of players would love to have this on their resume. Could be Ricky Fowler's tournament. I personally would like to see a Webb Simpson come back again. He plays Ponte Vedra, and his caddies, that's his home course. Paul Tesori loves that golf course. He knows how to play it, and Webb knows how to play it with Paul with him. And I think that's one of the storylines is, who's going to come out on top of the Players Championship that was canceled last year.
What's the key to victory going to be? I mean, it's an impressive field as always. I know a lot of people love the Island Green, but I mean, knowing the game like you do, what's going to be the key to making sure you're in the mix on Sunday?
No big numbers and be careful on 17. I mean, if you have a great round going, I think your goal is not to try and make a birdie on 17 to get ahead of the field. I think your goal on 17 is to make par and not make a big number. And that's kind of the game plan, I think, as far as the Players Championship at TPC Sawgrass is just stay away from the big numbers, put the ball on the green, go for the pins when you can, but when you can't, go for the middle, 2-putt and get out.
And obviously, Rich, I mean, the PC is known for, their dreaded 17th, but I saw, I'm looking at some different highlights. I mean, what tournament was it at the PC when Tiger Woods, I think he mimicked Kevin Na, I don't want to say his last name wrong. They mimicked each other as far as they both chipped in for a putt, and Kevin Na picked it up before it even hit, and then Tiger Woods just bigger than obviously Tiger's not going to be there, but trying to keep it light out there. These guys are pros. We know they're the best at what they do, but Tiger, is there somebody on the tour right now that could kind of make a moment like that we all can remember that shows, listen, man, we're human too, even though we're the best in the world at what we do.
Well, there's a lot of guys out there who I think are still playing this game just to have fun because they love to play. Tiger and Kevin Na did that at 16 on Sawgrass just prior to the 17th hole. And, Tiger was not necessarily in the tournament. Na made a putt, started to walk quickly after it. And Tiger has changed a lot since he's come back from all the issues that he had in the past before his accident recently. But, Tiger is trying to have more fun out there. He was doing more media interviews, talking to folks, talking to the fans, which is something we didn't have before. And I think since he's had a family, he's kind of lightened up a little bit. So I think we're going to see some of those moments at the Players Championship, but these guys are going out. I mean, it's a big purse. I mean, it's like $1.8 million or more to win the Players, and the prestige of saying that you won what now people are calling the Players the fifth major.
Now, Rich, I mean, you got strategy, and then there's the dreaded 17th of Sawgrass. I know they're the best out there, but it is unavoidable. What is the best strategy when it comes to a hole like that?
Par. Just get it on the green, 2-putt and get out. Now, I've played Sawgrass, and I've played it with a PGA guy, and the key, and I've birdied it every time. I'm sorry, I didn't. Why did I say that? That's sorry. That was old age. But what happened is I've parred every time I played it. Now that surprises me. I had one guy in front of me when we played the course. He hit 6 shots all in the water, and it was getting dark, and we're kind of waiting to play 17. He hit another shot on the green, 5-putted, and he probably took a 3 on the hole. I mean, but that's not something you're going to see at the Players Championship. But remember, the Players Championship 17, when I was talking to the general manager at Sawgrass, he said there's 30,000 golf balls in the water. Maybe not now because they have divers that go in after them. They probably wear the same hat that Ben has. But, it's one of those, sorry, Ben. It's one of those things that.
It's waterproof.
That's okay. That's good. But, it's one of those things that floats, but it's one of those things that, it's just an incredible hole. And I've played Sawgrass, and a lot of people have, and you really, I think, don't realize it's Sawgrass until you're in the fairway hitting your second shot into the green on 16, because you see the green on 16, you see 17, and obviously the 18 is right across the pond. So it's just an incredible golf course with a lot of history, and one that a lot of people want to win.
I can think of no better way to transition after Rich comes on and says, I've played 17 at Sawgrass, than to hit the weekly Rich Styles with Rich Styles.
And now, Rich Styles with Rich Styles.
All right, Rich, it's, got mid 60s, upper 60s, getting ready for the Players Championship. How we decking out here, getting ready for it?
Well, I'm in red, white, and blue today, and I've got my new shoes. I'm telling you, Ben. I know, Ben. You're looking at those. You're drooling. I can see your face right now. You're going, "Is where did he get those shoes?"
Rich Styles, Rich Styles with the drip, coming through with
All
the
I
drip.
can tell you is right there. It says "No Bull." So that's the name of the shoe. That's what you walk on. It's an incredible shoe, and it's a really big shoe, if you know what I mean.
And then, all I'm saying is Rich Styles coming through with the drip. Rich Styles Healthcare, Rich Styles Health Services, cleaning the board of health. Okay,
That's Rich Styles with Rich Styles. Rich, we appreciate it. We're up against it. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys, I'm out looking for fashion tips to help, and next week I'm going to have a hat that outpaces Ben because there are no forest fires, and I'm not going to drop and roll.
You better get right.
We're looking forward to it. Rich Styles joining us here on 3 and Out. Check out the Back Nine Boys Golf Show Saturday, Sunday mornings, 8 a.m. We'll come back with more 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's 3 and out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Good to have you along here on this Tuesday. The ACC basketball tournament getting started today, BJ and Ben, which is, it's one of the best basketball tournaments out there. But what you don't see too often is Duke playing on day one as a 10 seed. BJ, this is kind of indicative of the type of season Duke has had. They're playing with the likes of Pitt, Miami, Boston College here on day one. They're playing against Boston College, who's the 15 seed. But not too often, Coach K is having to roll it out there on day one of the ACC tournament.
Duke is playing a team with 4 wins on a Tuesday afternoon at 4:57 in the ACC tournament. I mean, it's crazy. And look, I mean, down seasons happen to everybody, but yeah, you are not accustomed to seeing Duke on a Tuesday in Greensboro unless it's a practice session before the quarterfinals.
I mean, how the mighty have fallen, right, BJ? But before we get out of here real quick, BJ, can y'all boys handle the big moments?
Well, I mean, winning the ACC tournament is nothing new for Florida State.
I was going to say, hey, where's the ACC here in 2020, 2021? Your top 4 seeds are Virginia, Florida State, Virginia Tech, and Georgia Tech. Who would have thought? It's 3 and out. We'll come back hour 3 all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us here all across the network. We are live streaming on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, as well as ESPNCoastal.com. Send us your thoughts via Twitter at Pigskin Radio. Joining us here on the program from the J-Boy Show. He's the host of the J-Boy Show. Jake Crane joins us here on 3 and Out. Jake, welcome. How are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. Always enjoy when I can come on with you guys, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, we appreciate you coming on, and certainly now we are getting to mid-March, and a lot of teams going to start spring practice. Who are the teams you think are looking at trying to compete with Bama and Georgia here as they head into spring?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, you look at Alabama and Georgia, and really Georgia, in my opinion, is really going to have a big year because of their personnel up front. If they're able to get Darion Kendrick, who they're in the running for at corner after losing those guys, obviously them and Bam are up at the top. You look around the rest of the league, I'm telling you, a team that I think is going to keep taking a step forward, and a lot of people think because Kellen Mond left that they're going to take a step back, is Texas A&M. They return some pretty good backs. You look at Spiller. I'm really excited about the two quarterbacks that they have, and I'm a firm believer that Jimbo wants to open up that offense more. Kellen Mond was a good college quarterback, but I don't think Jimbo felt, very good about letting him throw the ball and really open it up, especially in moments where the game's on the line. You think about the Auburn game where he throws basically what should have been an interception that would have pretty much sealed the game to Jacoby McClain. It goes right through his hands and into Weidermeyers for a touchdown. And that offensive line and run game was so good, they kind of just squeezed you to death. But I would not be surprised to see Texas A&M have another big year. I think LSU is actually going to bounce back. I think they do better as an outsider. I like the hires they made with Jake Peetz. You look at bringing in Durante Jones, guys like that. So I would say right now, off the top of my head, Texas A&M and LSU. I just think Auburn, from a personnel standpoint up front, it's going to be tough. Regardless of how good of schemes you come up with, you got to be able to block people. And when you don't sign a high school offensive tackle since 2017, it's tough to build good depth and have good roster structure there.
And Jake, you mentioned obviously Jimbo Fisher there at Texas A&M. Is this a big year for him at Texas A&M, given the contract, the money Texas A&M shelled out to get him? I mean, I know when they did that, they said, look, you're one of the handful of guys that actually has a national championship. We didn't give you all that money to come finish third in the West.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's an arms race everywhere in the SEC, and Texas A&M has a ton of money to spend. That oil money goes a long way. And look, Jimbo's one of the top coaches in the country. He was able to win at Florida State, where they don't have the best facilities, believe it or not. I think he's built that team from the inside out. You look at the line of scrimmage where the game is won. And again, defensively, I know everybody's going to talk about the offense with Jimbo Fisher, but if you look at the way that they've recruited, especially defensively on the defensive line, it's no longer, well, Texas A&M's just going to have to try and outscore everybody. They can line up and stop the power against some of these big teams. They have the nose guards and the threes and the shades and the ends, whether it be a buck or whether it be a strong side, to be able to do it. And I think they're going to take another step.
Here in the kind of preseason projection season, are we undervaluing Florida? And the reason I ask that is because Dan Mullen's a proven winner. I know they have a lot to replace, but over here on the Georgia coast, it seems like a lot of Dog fans aren't even really worrying about Florida as a contender. Do you think that's fair when you look at Florida and I guess Florida's relationship to Georgia specifically?
Yeah, I don't think Florida's I think they're going to take a step back. I mean, anytime you lose the production of Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney, that defense was very underwhelming last year. I don't think they're going to be elite by any standpoint on the defensive side, and I think it's a short leash for Todd Grantham anyway. So, I'm going to be honest with you. When I look at the East, I think outside of Georgia, the East is going to be down. I would not be shocked, and again, people may don't wreck your car when I say this, but I would not be shocked to see Missouri or Kentucky finish second and third in the East.
Wow. When you look at Missouri or Kentucky, what is it about one of those teams, and I guess which team in particular do you think could theoretically emerge as the top contender?
Well, it's obviously about those teams, but I think it's a lot that's around those teams. And look at the East. I mean, Tennessee is going to be down. It was a mass exodus out of there, especially with the NCAA sanctions coming. South Carolina had a depleted roster anyway. Just look at the guys outside of Shi Smith and Kevin Harris that they had at the skill positions on offense. So it's a complete, pretty much rebuild to me for Shane Beamer, especially up front as well, which is shocking when you look at some of the talent in that state, even with Clemson. Then you look at Vanderbilt. They're not going to be anything early. I think Clark Lee's a good coach. I think that job's really hard. But you look at Kentucky and Mark Stoops. I think somebody's going to whisper in his ear that he's allowed to throw the forward pass this year now that Eddie Grant is out of town. And if Kentucky's able to do that with the personnel they have on defense, they are an SEC team on the line of scrimmage, on offense and defense. You look at what that offensive line has been able to do, especially a couple years ago, and they're still returning some of those guys, a couple they thought were going to go pro that are coming back. You look at Missouri, and I think Eli Drinkowitz is one of the best coaches from a motion and formation standpoint. Thought he did a great job with Connor Bazelak, the freshman last year. They've added some pieces around him. They've got confidence. They don't think they're the whipping boys anymore. And like I said, I think Florida's going to be a disappointment. I don't believe in Emory Jones like everybody else does. So I think it's not only just Missouri and Kentucky kind of stepping up their game, but I think it's more of the SEC East being the SEC least this year outside of Georgia, who should be an elite team that has a chance to win a national championship.
And Jake, even sticking with Georgia, I mean, I know it's been you think about Georgia, you think about the running game, but they finally got that guy, JT Daniels. You saw his debut last year and how he finished the season. Are we going to get back to more of the air raid and then the running game when we've grown used to watching the run game lead the way?
Yeah, see, I think that's the $1 million question. And I interviewed DJ Shockley today on our show. We're going to be releasing that one soon, and we kind of dove into that a little bit. And what I don't think you're ever going to get the air raid from Kirby, but I think with Todd Monken, Kirby's come to the same realization that Nick Saban came to. The days of 9-6 and 13-3 and all that stuff, those are over. You have to score to win games and win national championships now. And I think the adjustment for Georgia, when you have a guy like JT Daniels, who I'm high on, I think he's a guy that understands how to play in the pocket, and I think he's a guy that can hit the deep shot that we all know they missed last year. George Pickens was open a decent amount of the time. They had some other guys that were open. They couldn't make the layups down the field. What I think the adjustment they need to make is be more aggressive on first down and don't just rely on the play action to be explosive vertically, because the trick to me for Georgia in any offense, you guys know this, is if you have a vertical passing game that is a threat, they have to honor that, whether it's keeping two safeties high, whether it's running some cover three to keep from giving the big play. Well, what does that do? That takes a safety out of the box. And when you've got an offensive line and the personnel like Georgia does, with an offensive line coach like Matt Luke and those backs and that system, you become as balanced as possible. And that is the difference when you're playing a team like Alabama or a team like Clemson or a team like Ohio State. We all know it's about matchups and numbers, and the more versatile your portfolio is from an explosive play standpoint, the better chance you have to win those games.
And Jake, I mean, when you think about what Joe Burrow was able to do for LSU, you think about what Tua was able to do for Alabama, you think about the fact that Mac Jones took it to another level by going 15-0 last year after, what Tua has seen. You telling me with everything that Georgia has on offense, a guy that ain't even from the state of Georgia, and JT Daniels that did not grow up a Georgia fan, is finna take Georgia out of them dark ages and say, look, man, we're going to be the team. I'm going to be the quarterback that's going to hoist up another, a national championship trophy so him and Buck Belue can have a sit down.
Yeah, well, the thing I like about JT, and I'm going to say this, I think anytime you're trying to compare an offense to what Joe Burrow did at LSU or what Cam Newton did at Auburn and stuff like that, it's almost unfair, especially with the numbers that Joe Burrow put up, because that was a true spread it out. We're going to throw it all across the field. We're going to throw the check down to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They almost pitched backwards where they're throwing the ball to set up the run a little bit, but they were able to get that 4th and 1 when they had to. But when I look at Georgia, I don't think JT Daniels has to be Superman for them to have success on offense. He's got to be able to make his free throws, and when they get Pickens lined up one-on-one, he's got to be able to hit the deep shot. But I think JT Daniel and Todd Monken are smart enough to realize that the tight end up the seam is crucial, especially in the red zone. And all these teams that you see having success, and you can use them in many different ways. You look at Miller Forrestall from Alabama, being able to use them on split zone to go kick out the end or the first guy you're getting on the edge, and then run the slip, and then being able to put them out and do stuff like that. I do think this is Georgia's, and I know people have said this about Georgia basically every year for the past 4 or 5 years, but this year coming up, I think Georgia has their best chance to win the whole thing, and it's because JT Daniels can hit the home run, but most importantly, he can hit the double and the single. That's all they need, because they've recruited at such a high level that if he gets the ball where it's supposed to be in a timely manner, they will have success. They'll be about as balanced as you can be and they'll have a chance to hold that trophy up at the end.
Jake Crane joining us here, host of the J Boy Show on 3 and Out. And Jake, obviously, a lot of college football news out this week, including the audio of one Rush Probst talking about Georgia and Alabama. What's kind of your thoughts, your take there on Rush Probst, a guy who obviously, from a lot of people's minds, has very little credibility on a number of issues when talking about things going on in football?
Well, to me, and again, I coached 9 years, 5 at the Division I level, and have been around it my whole life. And number one, the timing of when this got released, not when it's recorded. And I wasn't saying that I did a take on it on YouTube and talked about. I don't think that he knew he was being recorded, but I find the timing and the releasing of this very nefarious with all the stuff that's going on. We know about his past and the stuff in the past that happened at Hoover and all this, but he's got a controversy before this that gets stirred up. And to me, it's almost like trying to take people's minds off the wildfire by calling in a bomb threat to a local building in town. And with a guy that already had just a shred of credibility hanging left to say, and again, look, we all know what goes on in the SEC. We're not naive. Nobody's saying that cheating doesn't happen. But to sit there and single out not only coaches, but boosters, number one, you're playing a very dangerous game. Number two, you better lawyer up. And number three, how could this possibly help you, and why would you do that? So from a guy that, again, has lost a ton of credibility, I think it's a bonehead move, but the timing of it is very coincidental to me, and I think there's a little more to that story than being let out. And again, will anything come of it from the NCAA? I really don't think so, just because, it's Rush Probst. And for him to say that and single those guys out to me is just ridiculous. And I don't approve of it, and I don't want to be a part of stuff like that.
Jake Crane, host of the J Boy Show, joining us here on 3 and Out. Jake, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Hey, anytime. You guys let me know. Y'all do a great job, and I appreciate it.
Hey, we thank you so much for joining us. Jake Crane joining us here. Always a pleasure talking to him here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Again, if you missed any portion of our show, you can go to espncoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Get a podcasted version of the show each and every day there as well. You can find us on YouTube at ESPN Coastal. There, our channel on YouTube. Much more to come. We'll continue talking some college football. A lot of things happening in college football. We'll hit some of those topics next. 3 and Out, including Les Miles, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here on 3 and Out on this Tuesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Thanks for making us a part of your day. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. Don't forget, you can also vote in our running back bracket. We've got the second day of the opening round on our running back bracket. Go to ESPN Coastal on Twitter. You can see all of those contests. Still a little bit of time for you to vote on those as we continue to move forward. The best running backs in college football history. I know that is a tough bracket sometimes, some tough decisions that have to be made there. We'll get to that coming up in just a little bit. But we just talked with Jake Crane of the J-Boy Show, talking about, again, Nick Chubb responding to Rush Probst, saying, look, if I needed the money, I would have gone pro. Hashtag fake news. Jake saying, look, kind of interesting, the timing of that stuff kind of coming out when Rush Probst is in the middle of yet another interesting news cycle for him, if you will, BJ, a guy that seemingly has issue after issue pop up wherever he's kind of landed around the high school football world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really paying a whole lot of attention, to a lot of that stuff. It's out there. People are commenting on it. It's on social media or whatever. And I've listened to a portion of the alleged tape or I guess the alleged video on YouTube, but I'm not paying attention to that stuff. I mean, I think it's out there. I think it's kind of crazy, and I don't know how you kind of apply credibility to it. I think it's just talk, and I'm not kind of processing it much, to be honest.
I mean, I think that's what happens when you give coaches like Coach Probst a lot like a platform, influence, and when he says things that matters. I mean, the fact that the University of Georgia Compliance Office is taking what he's saying serious, and because ultimately we really don't know. Like, yes, we're talking about a person that doesn't have a lot of credibility, but he's still a big-time head coach. He still knows about a lot of teams. I mean, he's still like one of those teams where people come to when it comes to recruiting. But I do agree sometimes you got to understand that you can't deal with everybody just because they're a big-time head coach and they have some big-time players coming out of their school. You got to keep people at a distance because, as Jake mentioned, we don't know if he was being recorded and things of that nature, but BJ and Kevin, you can go from an asset, to a guy that's really, really trying to like bring down the system really, really quickly. So I don't give a lot of credence to it either. But once again, we're not talking about a nobody here. We're talking about a guy who has lied his whole career and he still has one. Think about that. He still has a career. So we'll see what comes out.
Just macro. And I mean, Kevin, we've talked about this for years. I mean, there have been stories and reports and speculation, whatever. Macro, do I think there's cheating in college football and college sports? Yeah. I mean, there's pretty much cheating in everything. I mean, every single thing that human beings have ever been involved with, there have been somebody or a group of people trying to get a leg up, trying to do something that's, not following the rules. So, yeah. And I mean, you see the stories out there about, the Tennessee and the McDonald's bag. But in terms of, just kind of specifics or saying this and that, I mean, it's something that I'm not paying much attention to. But like, Jake said, I mean, I don't think that every single instance of college football is following every single NCAA guidebook rule. That's not what I'm saying. But, some of this stuff, I'm just not paying attention to it.
I was paying attention to some stories and around college football. Kansas certainly paying attention to what happened at LSU last week when their report came out about Les Miles and his relationships as inappropriate as they were happening there at LSU. And Les Miles and Kansas agreed to mutually part ways. So no longer the head coach at Kansas is Les Miles. Mike DeBoer going to serve as the interim. But, BJ, that news coming out today with Les Miles and Kansas, he is out as the Jayhawks head coach.
Yeah, very concerning allegations. And then you think about the two reports, by the two law firms. Understandably, when that stuff came out, it was going to be a matter of time. You're talking about, LSU athletic director Joe Oliva had an email saying, look, and I'm paraphrasing, but we can fire and probably should fire this guy for cause. And then you're talking about, couldn't be alone with a female student at LSU. When that stuff came out, it's a matter of time. It's the right call. And if you're Kansas, you react to the news, the information you have, and you make the decision. Yeah, it was the right call and came out came out. I think the news about the mutually parting ways came out late last night, and Kansas now moving on from Les Miles.
Very, very proud of Kansas. I think they did what they had to do, not just for the current student athletes, but for their reputation, both present and future. And the thing about it is this, I mean, when it comes to college athletics, and I'm just talking about in general, nothing should surprise you anymore, BJ and Kevin, nothing. Because think about this. We saw the report about Les Miles. If somebody would have just casually said that, you'd have been like, man, what are you talking about? You said if somebody would have just casually said it. Because the whole thing about it is, if anybody has shown you erratic behavior in freaking college, it is the coaches. Because the same reason why a player that continues to have bad behavior and keep moving up, why would they stop? This happened in 2013. So when people go, hey, why don't these people come forward? Les Miles is powerful. He's not just in college football. He got to get another job. Wow, I got another job and LSU was still paying me while I got the new job. So I give a lot of because you know how it is, Kevin and BJ, when it comes to high-profile coaches, they quote, oh, LSU, I mean, they said they were going to fire him. Did they do it? No, they didn't do it. Well, I don't want to hear about it. Don't talk about what you could have done. Kansas said, hell no, he got to go. I don't care how good he is. It ain't worth our future for this guy. So I give them a lot of credit because, you know it's hard for them to walk away from a high-profile coach like Les Miles.
And again, we'll see. Obviously, the fallout from that is you have an interim coach sitting there for Kansas. But BJ, obviously, as soon as one coach leaves, the scuttlebutt begins on, well, who would be a great replacement? And you're talking a lot of, I guess, hot takes, if you will, around the internet today saying, hey, a guy like Jeff Monken might be interesting at Kansas. You bring in a different system. We saw what Paul Johnson was able to do at Georgia Tech, where you were a headache for a team every single week running that offense. Could he go to the Big 12 and bring that there and make Kansas a contending team? I think Les Miles was making a little over $2 million a year, so might be a pay upgrade. But what say you about when you hear Jeff Monken and guys of that nature potentially going and possibly being involved in a Kansas job?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, it's kind of like the same names, come up whenever there's a vacancy. It's like, oh, there's an opening at Georgia Tech. Here are the names. Those same names are the candidates at Vanderbilt. These same exact names are now the candidates at Illinois and at Kansas. So
those are similar type programs in terms of what they're going to have to do to win at least quickly in their leagues. Based on, in the case of Illinois, Kansas, when have they won consistently in football?
Yeah, Kansas had the stretch with Mark Mangino and Todd Reesing and those guys where they made the Orange Bowl, but outside of that, not a whole lot. I think Jeff Monken is an excellent football coach. Some of the early kind of Twitter names that have been thrown out there, and who knows if this is reflective or not, but you've seen a couple of former Georgia Southern head coaches. You've seen Jeff Monken. I saw some people mentioning Willie Fritz potentially, who is at Tulane down in New Orleans. So these are guys that know football, that are successful. Army, the U.S. Military Academy, West Point is such a unique, special place. I know you can compare and contrast salaries, but when Jeff Monken's had Army in the national top 25. Army has a history and tradition and obviously a purpose that is remarkable. And you think about, you get to play Navy in kind of a showcase game every year. You think about, we always say college football programs have kind of regional relevancy, right? Like Georgia matters in the Deep South. Army matters all over the world. There are people, in Navy and Air Force, there are people all over the world following these programs. So I don't know. I don't know how you weigh or compare and contrast all that. I think Jeff Monken will be successful anywhere he goes. Same for Willie Fritz. So it's the same kind of collection of names. In terms of a timetable, I would expect Kansas to take their time. I don't know if they're hiring an outside firm, but I would expect this to be something that probably goes into the summer potentially, maybe late spring, early summer, but we'll see.
I think that Jeff Monken will be a great hire, BJ, for the simple fact that people always talked about Paul Johnson, what he was able to do at Georgia Tech. Paul Johnson was sitting in the room with Tommy Bowden, and they were sitting there laughing at the joke. He said, Tommy, yeah, how do you feel to play against me? Like, man, that's exactly, it was rough because you know what you're getting. And Kansas obviously does not recruit like the rest of the Big 12. They're not winning like usual suspects in the Big 12. Why do we shouldn't be recruiting like them either? Let's go ahead and have a style of football that's going to irritate everybody, including, the Oklahomas and the Texases of the world. Give us a chance to go out there and, get back to winning some bowl games, because I do think with a team like Kansas, they're always going to be at a disadvantage, not just because of who they are, but who they play in the conference that they play in. Go out there and get that triple option. I know old Kevin will like that triple. Who knows? Kevin might get an old Kansas Jayhawk jersey if y'all get that triple going up there.
It's a fun offense to watch, I think, but that's neither here nor there. Hey, we'll come back. Speaking of fun to watch, we got the second half of our second side of our running back bracket to get to. You can go vote on ESPN Coastal on Twitter, and we'll give you our thoughts when we come back and help move these guys forward into round number 2. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along on this Tuesday, Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Glad you are with us here on the show. Live streaming ESPNCoastal.com. Also live video, ESPN Coastal's Facebook page, Twitter, YouTube channel. You can catch that as well, as we are into the throes of the first round of our running back bracket. Best collegiate running backs of all time. You guys worked through the left side of the bracket yesterday. Today we'll kind of figure our way through somewhat of the right side. You still have an hour or so to vote on the fan side. There's a portion of the voting to help us move this through. But let's run through it. You got the 1 seed, Bo Jackson against Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, a great running back. Does he even stand up next to Bo Jackson?
No. Bo is one of the standards, and that's no disrespect to Jonathan Taylor. We talked about this yesterday with D'Angelo Williams running into Adrian Peterson out of Georgia Southern in the opening round, or Emmitt Smith running into Herschel Walker. Dude, it is what it is at this point. So, I mean, Bo's your guy, but no, Bo's the vote here, clearly.
Listen, Bo, man, I wish I didn't have to do this to you, man, but I think something. I'm just playing. I wish y'all could see Kevin. What? No, Jonathan. Sorry. I mean, you made it to the round of 32, and that's all you did. It is Bo Jackson all day, every day.
I don't know. I was like,
I would have heard him like, B, you did what? I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, that's right. Bo Jackson is leading into fan voting right now. We've got Billy Sims and Ron Dayne. There's an interesting 5-4 matchup here. Ron Dayne, Heisman Trophy winner, led college football in rushing. Billy Sims, a tremendous player as well. Where you lean on this one, BJ?
I think I got to go Ron Dayne, and probably shouldn't have won the Heisman. Probably should have been Peter Warrick in '99, but still one of the GOATs. Finished his career with the most rushing yards in FBS, or 1A, if you want to call it that at the time, history. And didn't necessarily have a superstar pro career, but that's not what this is about. When he was in college, he was the truth, and he was the standard. And you think about all the guys at Wisconsin, right? You think about the Jonathan Taylors, the Monty Balls, you think about these guys that year in and year out get 400 carries and dominate. Ron Dayne started that. So I got to go with Ron.
Of course, I'm gonna go with Ron and BJ for everything you just mentioned. But at the same time, it wasn't flashy when he was doing it. It was just, that's when you had that bell cow type running back. You just handed to him 3 or 4 yards in a cloud of dust. When you hoist up the Heisman with a guy like Peter Warrick in college at the time, who I do agree should have won it, he didn't win and went to Ron. So give me Ron Dayne. Yes,
I went Billy Sims here. Heisman Trophy winner there at Oklahoma. Again, I think a different era of college football. I think everybody would agree. You're talking about college football in the 1970s versus the late 90s. So you're probably getting, in terms of stats, much more run heavy, much more split carries back in the day in the 70s. But I go Billy Sims, a Heisman Trophy winner, Davey O'Brien Award winner. Give me Billy Sims for my guess. I'll be contrarian to you guys right now on the picks. This is another interesting one. I mean, Tony Dorsett, legend, a 3 seed at Pitt. Ernie Davis there at Syracuse. I mean, Ernie Davis got a movie made about him as well. So where do you go here with, a very tough 3-6 matchup?
Yeah, and this is the greatest running back bracket. So you talk about influence and significance. I think both guys elite, all-time greats, but I believe Ernie Davis, the first African-American to win the Heisman Trophy. And you think about, his legacy and production. Wow. Tony Dorsett, one of the all-time superstars. That's the challenge of this, but I think I got to go Mr. Ernie Davis out of Syracuse.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Ernie Davis for the simple fact that he was following the GOAT. I mean, he was following Jim Brown, and he was able to take it to another level, winning the Heisman, BJ. And listen, that we always sleep on a guy like Tony Dorsett. Them Pitt Panthers got some players, by the way. But for me, I'm gonna go with Ernie Davis.
I went Tony Dorsett. I can't argue. I mean, now that I heard all the wonderful layout for Ernie Davis, I'm like, did I really do that? But I go Tony. I went gut. That's all I could do. I went gut. I went Tony Dorsett there in my vote. Larry Johnson, 7 seed against O.J. Simpson, a 2 seed. I'll just tell you right now. Obviously O.J. is known for stuff, unfortunately, but people I think don't appreciate how good that dude was at USC.
Yeah, Larry Johnson was something special, but you're talking about a different level. O.J. Simpson with what he did at SC with the Trojans, the 2,000 yards, obviously the yards per carry, the proficiency. It's and I think OJ was kind of one of the first big playbacks, like true, home run hitters on a regular basis. So yeah, I think it's Simpson.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember Larry Johnson coming out of Penn State. I think it came down to him and like Chris Brown for the Doak Walker Award, BJ. But I do agree, OJ Simpson. We forget about how great of a college running back he was because of all the other stuff. But listen, man, it's Juice, baby. Come on, man. You got a name like Juice. Give it up for Juice. I'm going with OJ.
All right, moving into the bottom half of the right side of our bracket. Again, you can vote along with us at ESPN Coastal on Twitter. Earl Campbell and Cedric Benson, the fan voting right now, not even close, leaning towards Earl Campbell. I mean, Cedric Benson, a great running back, but I don't think this one's going to be very close in my estimation. I went, Earl Campbell.
Earl Campbell, one of those guys that you tackled him and you got dealt the punishment, right? So it's like you brought him down and technically you got a tackle, but you probably got ran over. Just a power back, dominant. Yeah, I mean, look, everybody on here is a great back, but you talk about being on the short list for best ever. Earl Campbell's right there.
Yes, of course it's Earl Campbell. I mean, I do remember Cedric Benson, an incredible talent, but I just think that when you think about them big, gigantic, thigh pads, didn't let him leave the state, got drafted by them Houston Oilers. Yes, it's Earl Campbell.
All right, continuing to move down the bracket. This is a great 6-3 in my opinion. 6 seed Darren McFadden against 3 seed Ricky Williams. I mean, Ricky Williams, a team gave up their whole draft for Ricky Williams coming out of Texas. Darren McFadden, part of a 3-headed monster there at Arkansas with Felix Jones, and I just had his name on the tip of my tongue.
Peyton Hillis.
Yeah, Peyton Hillis.
Kind
of like the incorporation of the Wildcat started because of Darren McFadden. So you had some college football innovation, if you will. Where do you go here, Darren McFadden or Ricky Williams?
And Ben was making an argument for Ricky Williams as being a 1 seed, and understandably so. But I think it's DMAC when you talk about influence. Darren McFadden, we see the Travis Etiennes now. You see the backs like Clyde Edwards-Helaire who have gaudy receiving totals in terms of their overall production in addition to the rushing yards. Darren McFadden did everything. Lining up at quarterback, the wild hog. Darren McFadden had a couple of touchdown passes when he was at Arkansas. Also was elite, like one of the greatest ever as a return specialist. So I think given all that he did, the totality of his influence, I'll never forget just his long strides going down the sidelines. So graceful and beautiful to watch. I know you played with him with the Raiders, Ben, but with all due respect to Ricky Williams, and I feel terrible about this, I do, but I just think the overall influence in the spectrum, I got to go with Darren McFadden.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Darren McFadden for the same reason, because this is the thing. When you think about Texas, I mean, we had 2 Texas greats against each other, Earl Campbell, Cedric Benson. I think, if you won't have to fact check me, BJ, I think that Priest Holmes was the backup to Ricky Williams when he was at Texas. And then you talk about the great backs that came behind those guys. But for me, I think when you think about Arkansas, Texas, you think about a lot of great running backs. Arkansas, I mean, taking it away from Felix, taking it away from Peyton Hillis, it's DMAC. I mean, DMAC literally had to be the quarterback and the running back and made it all the way to the SEC championship game. He ran into them boys. But I'm just saying, so for me, give it up for I'm going to go with DMAC.
You couldn't go 10 minutes, BJ, without flipping one of those in there. I went with Darren McFadden in this one as well. Adrian Peterson, Oklahoma edition against Doak Walker. Adrian Peterson, Oklahoma, very good running back. The other guy is an award. I know what I'm saying, but the other guy is an award.
Look at BJ's face.
Well, no, I mean, my thing is, I thought we were doing, I don't know off the top of my head when Doak Walker played, but wasn't there you had to have played after?
I said that. I think Christian said, hey, we got to include some of these guys. So, we did. But one guy literally is an award.
I mean, look, shout out to Doak Walker, but I mean, I'd rather have like Dalvin Cook on here or some of the, if we're doing more recent. I'm going to go with Adrian Peterson. Now, he's the second best Adrian Peterson in this bracket. I mean, and that's just real talk, but still a star. What he did at a national elite program. And again, when I look at guys, what stands out to me isn't necessarily just the rushing yards, but what did you average? Were you at 6, 6.5, 7 yards per carry? So I think it's Adrian Peterson.
Listen, I hate to not let a guy, advance who, Adrian Peterson won the Doak Walker Award. I mean, so Look, I mean, I'm gonna pay homage to you, dope, down the road when I win the award. But for right now, I'm gonna have to beat you in the stand and give me AP.
Yeah, I mean Adrian Peterson, and then the final one. I mean, it's a 1-8. Barry Sanders, Red Grange. Again, we kind of went outside the. We kind of went outside the range of having been able to see them play. So I mean, I think Barry Sanders is going to move on pretty easily.
I mean this with all due respect. I understand this is putting together brackets and lists is very hard work. But if we said you had to have played on TV, I mean this is a serious question.
Talk to Christian about it. He finalized the bracket.
Did Red Grange even play in the 1900s?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
it wasn't. I mean, you say yes like it was 1970. It was 1900 something or 19.
He went to school with Vince Lombardi.
I mean, Kevin, what's your favorite Red Grange? What was your favorite Red Grange play?
Red Grange. He became a country music singer.
Yeah, he's got a lot of hits.
No, I'm just saying, if somebody go, hey man, listen, next up, I want to give it up for Red Grange. People like this. Oh man, I know your grandfather was good. No. He played running back.
He was the Galloping Ghost.
He was also born in 1903.
Well, hold on. Whoa.
No, that's not. No, I'm saying going back to the protocol. I'm not disrespecting Red Grange. He's one of the all-time greats. What I'm saying is, look, Chicago Bears, all like that. But what I'm saying is, we said you had to have played on TV. I think Doak Walker might have kind of been like sort of close. Like, did they even have widespread electricity? I mean, I'm being serious, Kevin.
No, Red Grange. What water he fight in?
I don't know, but I don't know this because Kevin, you're like the history guy. In 1915, kind of like what was the climate? Like what was the technological reality of the country?
It's called dirt.
I think you were getting close to the industrial age where you had widespread electricity.
I mean, listen. When you used to go to practice, and somebody said, "Get on up there, get on up there." I mean, you got horse and chariots and stuff. It's
in
fine.
1915, this is what the inventions were at the time: gas mask, tanks, sonar, and Pyrex glass. 1915.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just asked you what
Pyrex glass, big revolutionary invention.
I mean, look, dude was a stud, but come on, Barry Sanders, one of the favorites. He's on the short list. It's Barry Sanders. Plus, I can at least talk to someone who saw him play in college. I mean, Kevin,
how do you know we can't talk to someone who saw him play in college?
I mean, you're right.
I mean, 1903, BJ.
Oh no, that's when he was born. I went and looked, so I guess he played in like 1920.
Yeah.
So he was born back when people weren't using words like he's a beast. They didn't use words
Probably
like
not. No.
He's a ball playing Jesse right there. Okay.
I mean, no, look, Christian did a great job with this. All I'm saying is we set a line of demarcation where we said you had to have been on TV, and then we put Red Grange on it.
I mean, to be fair, BJ, when has anybody followed the rules on this show?
Well said.
We'll come back. We've got more to come. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here on 3 and Out on this Tuesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Glad you were with us all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We'll continue our running back bracket as we go along. Unfortunately, Red Grange did not make the cut, BJ. Obviously, not going to do that, but
well, I did get a good text from PJ Zuko, who messaged me and said if Adrian Peterson would have played before Doak Walker, it would be the Adrian Peterson Award. I mean, so look, I mean, he's right. And look, that's not to discredit the greats of the game, the pioneers. That's not to look past some of the. All I'm saying is I was confused by the ruling, because you guys know I like for things to be explained, laid out. I like to know what we're talking about, what we're dealing with. I mean, and I'm just being honest. I don't have very many Red Grange memories.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, Red Grange. Like, BJ, you a football historian. You know who Red Grange is that we should ask him? Matt Smith. I bet you he knows him.
I mean, I know who Leonard Fournette is. I mean, he could have been on there.
I know who Leonard Fournette is. I'm just saying. I mean, his parents really had to think deep for them names. Leonard, Leonard. Lord have mercy. But I'm just saying, BJ, yes, I think it's been a good list thus far. Hasn't been no. I knew we got the Bears. I mean, we got the Bo Jackson. I said, listen, I'm gonna have to go ahead and disappoint. Kevin was like, what? Boy, don't do nothing crazy. Twitter feed would have been lit up.
No. Kevin's gonna be on there, skewing the polls on ESPN Coastal for Bo Jackson.
You only vote one time. There's no skewing of the polls. I have the utmost integrity when it comes to the polls.
As long as he beat me and BJ in anything competitive, Kevin's good. As far as like lists.
I'm saying we could have done the best DB of all time bracket, but that's not even. I mean, that'd be silly. That'd be
really. We can't do the best DB of all time now. You want to start that? Peter Ward should have won in '99.
Oh, you want to do the best receiver of all time too? Okay, I mean.
Hey, speaking of awards, where's Ray Guy from? I gotta go.
All right, Kevin, tell Christian that next week we got to have the best punter of all time bracket.
Our punter bracket, sure to drive the masses wild. We'll get to that moving forward. If you missed any portion of the show, ESPNCoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, you can catch the podcasted version of the show, and we will see you again tomorrow. We'll do it all again here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Conversation continues there on Twitter at Pigskin Radio.